And we are live.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. It's on.
Yeah, we liked it. Thanks, Ron.
Yep, I can hear you too, Don.
So, Don, you and I get to use it.
Okay.
Oh, sounds good.
Kentucky Parks.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Kentucky Parks with golf courses.
That's even better. That's even better.
All that we got is the stuff around here.
I'll check it. That's okay. Thank you, though.
But there's nowhere, there's nothing there but water sport, big lake, water sports and golf.
Okay. Yeah, you know where I'm at?
Where I went,
Oh, where you went? Yeah.
and they had a lodge where you could stay there, and the one restaurant in the lodge. There was nothing around.
That's all you need, though.
That's a
Restaurant,
Hi, Chris.
a bathroom, and a golf course.
place to sleep. It was a
And a
good
bed, yeah.
place to sleep.
Before we get started, I'd like to remind everybody at home, if you're not speaking, please keep your microphone muted. It helps with the sound quality immensely. Thank you.
Ron,
Yes, sir.
Chris Gorman requests that you send him an invitation.
I did once, but we'll do again.
Thanks.
That some of them.
7 o'clock, so I'll call
Hold
the
on,
meeting.
boss.
7 o'clock, so I'll call the meeting to order. What?
Spindale House. Thank you.
Okay.
Give Chris a chance to get in.
Okay, I'm here right now. Thank you.
All right.
Call the meeting to order. This is the monthly meeting of the City Council of the City of Prospect, Kentucky. Today is August 16th, 2021, and all members of the City Council are present. Also, the city attorney. Proceed with the agenda. The first item is consider approving the minutes of the last meeting. Those minutes have been distributed, or proposed minutes. So are there any suggested corrections or additions? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve those minutes as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it and they're approved. Next item is the mayor's report. First item is to tell you that street paving bids came in much lower than expected, according to Mark Madison. Based on last spring's projects, Mark had expected the bids to be in the range of $400,000. However, the low bid was $334,200 from Hall's Contracting for paving all Fox Harbor Road, Gunpowder Lane, Westover Drive, and Fairway View Court. The second and third lowest bids were $337,930 and $355,622. Only one of the four bids was over $400,000. So we will go forward with this repaving in the near future. Second, the engineering estimate for Milestones for the City Hall parking lot for repaving and upgrade arrived just on Friday. It totals $48,309.78. Nearly half of this is for concrete retaining walls to keep the edges of the paved surfaces from crumbling and eroding as they have been. This figure is about $30,000 less than had been estimated during the walkthrough we did with the engineers about 2 weeks ago. We will work with Milestone on getting this project accomplished. Third, regarding the Little Hunting Creek Park project, I do not expect anything other than planning to happen until we know whether we have gotten the 50/50 grant, and that will be in December. As to planning, I'm going to ask.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Sarah.
I can't understand all of the words. Could you at least do that last sentence again, please?
Sure, I'll start with the Little Hunting Creek project, Little Hunting Creek Park project. How am I doing? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
I do not expect anything other than planning to happen until we know whether we have gotten the 50/50 grant, and that will be in December. And as to the planning, I'm going to ask Sarah Odell to jump in here regarding the playground and Herb to talk about a planned pavilion. So Sarah, take it away.
Yeah, so the mayor is correct that we won't hear anything until December for the grant. I'm still hoping we'll get a feel for it at some point, and I'll call and check in and just see how things are looking. The city is in talks with the Weber Group, which is a professional design consultant, to do a master plan for the park to ensure that all of the pieces, that there's professional thought for continuity and use. So that should happen in the next couple months, well in time by the time we find out in December whether we have the 50% match. In tandem with that, I met today. I had a meeting last week at City Hall with Tavia Brown, who is the director of Creasy Mahan. She has recently moved into Prospect, and she met just as a private citizen up at City Hall so I could chat about their playground complex up at Creasy Mahan. She recommended a particular company, and she had such strong recommendations for both price and quality that I felt it would be a loss to the city if we didn't meet with that person, just to kind of find out what some options are there. So I met with her today, and she will, over the next probably 2 weeks, do some custom designs. So not necessarily so cookie cutter, but I kind of walked her through, this is the look of Prospect, this is the feel, this is what was presented to citizens, et cetera, and get her input for play equipment. So it's in the same spot. There's nothing fundamentally different, but it would just be potentially something a little bit more bespoke, more, it's just another option for us, for the city to go over. So she'll do that. It's of no cost to us. So I think it's our due diligence, just to be able to do that. And then I think Herb will cover the one change in terms of a gazebo to a pavilion and how that will work. But does anybody have any questions about those items I covered?
Did you just say that Herb will cover the change about the pavilion?
I believe that's what he's going to speak about. Yeah. Mhm.
That's
Yes,
one of my questions. I'll wait then. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
Herb?
Yes, sir.
tell them what we're tell them what we're thinking about with regard to the pavilion instead of the gazebo.
Yeah, of course, is what the mayor said is, this is a look at the planning of it. It's not really a detailed aspect, but in my architectural experiences, I had lots of experience with pavilions and use. And so with that, and then the mayor and I went out and looked at some pavilions. And what we're looking at is, the pavilion is to be a multi-use, where it could accommodate a music event where a good sized musical group could perform, and could be a picnic area for family reunion. And so what we're looking at is something that's not too big nor too small. And roughly, in our opinion right now, just in our planning, is it something more like 24 feet by 36 feet? And there is a pavilion in Cherokee Park. It's been there probably 20 years. It's called the Barringer Pavilion. And there's a lot about that pavilion we think would be, could be very appropriate for Prospect. It's it's definitely an open air pavilion, but has somewhat of a historic, feel to it. Like it's got some substance. It's definitely not more of what, many times in a recreational area where it's just more of a real streamlined pavilion. We feel so, but we're still in the planning stage. But that roughly that less than 900 square feet, we think can work for all. Can be the right size. So, but there'll be further thoughts on that. So I'd like to, if I can answer any questions, I will.
I have a question. I'm assuming that the cost to erect a pavilion would actually be less expensive than a similar size gazebo. Is that correct to assume that?
Well, I mean, a gazebo is an open air, event space, and really, it's many times, gazebo is a lot smaller than a pavilion, which I think is what was envisioned. I would think that the pavilion we're thinking about would probably be more than what was, considered in the initial budget. But, we're at the early stages, but more want to get the size to be the size it really works for, for Prospect. That's what we're considering.
Since we have the monies approved in the budget, so if we didn't expend any more monies to build the pavilion, and I'm in favor of the pavilion, I like that idea. I think you get a bigger bang for your buck on that. But does the council need to go back and revisit its decision if we change the type of structure? I'm asking, from a gazebo to a pavilion, do we need to go back simply because we're changing one of the pieces, or do we just look at the cost and stay within the cost? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Greg, do you mean, just so I understand, do you mean from the grant perspective, or you just mean in general for the
I mean,
council?
in general, yeah,
Oh,
the
gotcha.
grant
Okay.
probably, yeah, just in
Yeah,
general.
so for the grant, I can answer that piece. We do not have to get any particular approval to change the plans in there, since it's basically a shade structure or a gathering location. So from the grant perspective, it's fine to make the change.
I agree from the grant perspective, it's not a problem, but as far as what we do as a council, do we need to agree? As far as the change, if we change it to a pavilion, do we need to go back and rediscuss that, or is that a moot point?
My opinion, I think that the budget settles the matter.
I'm sorry, John.
I said, I think that the budget that was passed settles that matter. I don't think that whether it's a gazebo or a pavilion is something that requires council vote on going back on it.
Okay.
Actually, one of the times to look at it, if we're going to look at it all, I agree with what the mayor just said. It's if these plans come in and they're radically different and better than what we talked about before, maybe that's the time to talk about it again.
I did speak with a member from the Weber group. I was trying to send a file, and they did mention that there's obviously a strong desire to show they want to do their stuff in 2 steps. So develop an initial master plan, come in and get feedback from the council, and then go back and create the final product. So even if there isn't a vote, the intent I know is, I'm sorry, my daughter just ran in to tell me she rode her bike by herself. Sorry, I have to, big smiles, is that second bit. So come in, get input, revise, and then come back. So we have a full plan.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Sandra, I want to thank you for your comment and also for calling me by my first name, which nobody ever does anymore. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, thank you. Next, I wanted to touch on, let me just say this about all this planning that's going on. It's certainly my intent, and I think Sarah's and everybody's, to share our thinking as we move forward with the council month after month and in between. We're not trying to do this covertly or anything like that. We just want everybody to know what we're thinking and get your input. Moving along, I wanted to give you a brief update on the 2 pieces of litigation that are going on currently with LDG, both as to Prospect Cove and also with regard to the so-called Viridian. First, the litigation brought by LDG over Prospect Cove back in 2017. The Circuit Court has now again denied LDG's allegations that Metro Council's rejection of their rezoning was arbitrary. The court has now finally rejected that. In addition to that, the court also has refused to clear the way for LDG to appeal that ruling at this time. They can't appeal until, she said, until the rest of the case has been resolved. You may not remember this, but their case has 3 parts, and Prospect is party only to the first part, which alleged that the Metro Council's action was arbitrary, and that has now been finally disposed of by the court. But until the other 2 parts of LDG's case are resolved as well, the order won't be final and appealable, so it can't be appealed. The rest of the case that Prospect is not involved in are LDG's allegations that Metro Council's rejection of its zoning violated federal law. Prospect is not involved in that part of the case, but I have not seen any movement or development of that part of LDG's case. So the whole thing is kind of in limbo until they do develop that part of their case, whichever way it turns out, and they get a final decision on that. All right, turning to the Viridian. The litigation brought by the homeowners who live adjacent to the proposed apartment project called the Viridian has received an unfavorable ruling by the Circuit Court. And I expect there will be an appeal this month to the Court of Appeals on that ruling. Those same homeowners are also pursuing a determination that the project will adversely affect surrounding historic properties. And this pursuit appears to be successful at this point. Any questions about either of those? Okay, finally, in my update, I want to mention that last week, this week just gone by, Don Gibson and Sarah Odell, along with John Carter and me, We met for an hour or so to discuss ARP money, what we might be able to do with it, how our accountants should handle it, and the reporting requirements. And at this point, I'm going to ask Don and Sarah to report on that meeting.
Well, the first thing we talked about was the handling of the money. We've had something like $630,000 of our money given to us. Kentucky League of Cities said we should put those funds into the general fund. The problem with that is there's a lot of limitations on expenditures and use of those funds. And of that $600,000+, we've only identified about $208,000 that we can use. So one of the things we suggested is John Carter, our city clerk, will get with Kelly King, our accounting, and somehow do an annotation or set up another account so it doesn't distort our income statement. And what I'm talking about, like for instance, right now, we got $400,000 in revenue and we really can't use it. And it's more a liability than it is an asset until we can identify some use for it. And so this is what we're asking our accounting folks to set up so we don't lose track of that, of the money, what in fact is an asset and what's in fact a liability. Any questions on that?
There's an article in the Courier Journal in regard to this issue, and they interview Dira from Bonnie Jung and a few others. And at least several of them are going to do what he's talked about because it's still focused on COVID-related expenditures. And we don't tend to have as many of those as some of the other small cities.
The other aspect, the app funds are that whole process is evolving. And for instance, one of the things that funds can be used for is parks, expanding parks. And I was in touch with Mr. Thomas Coleman, who works for KLC, and he's the Director of Research and Government Relations. And I sent him an email, and I thought it'd be a while before I got it, but he responded quickly. And we went through some of the things that's in our budget items. And for instance, the trail repairs, expanding the concrete walk to the canoe launch, which I think is currently happening. The cut at Cali Park in Westover, he felt like would be use of funds. So in the discussions with the mayor and John and Sarah and myself, John has to fill out a report, I think the Treasury once a quarter in terms of the status of the funds. And so he agreed, Sarah and I and anyone else interested, we'll sit down with John and we'll take a look at what the status is as well as opportunities for us to use those funds. Sarah, anything you want to add?
I think the only thing, the timing, the treasury reporting's not out yet. He said, it's any day, but any day has been a little bit. So he expects it may be pretty close to the quarterly reporting. So just FYI, in terms of timing, we don't quite have that yet.
Which treasury is it? The federal or
It's
state?
federal.
It's the federal, yeah.
All right, that's the end of the mayor's update. Are there any questions about any of the things I've talked about? If not, we'll move on into committee reports. And the first one is the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. Is there someone here to make that?
Yeah, I told, so I'll do that. I told Linda her flight is delayed, so she wasn't able to make the meeting tonight. It was the written report we all received, but if you'll bear with me, I'll just go real quick for the sake of public being able to hear that report. I'll go through those items and see if you guys have any questions. So ICF, the team who has been doing our invasive plant removal, Most of their work will be done in the fall. Some of it is being done right now because right now is the proper time to do the tree of heaven, which chokes out kind of all the local trees from growing. And they found some, I guess, the mother location, the ones you want to target. So they'll be doing that. The rest would be in the fall. As far as the bridge study, that's the replacing the culvert near where the concrete is going into the canoe launch. So in Harrods Creek Park, where it's eroding. OHM advisors, Steve Emily, he's met with Linda and Ron. They've got a game plan together for OHM advisors to give us a proposal. It'll come in two phases. The first phase being the preliminary engineering study, geotechnical work, required permits, and recommendations for the bridge design options, since we do have to have future ability in case anyone needs to get heavy equipment back there, so that we don't kind of close ourselves in for that. The second phase being designing the particular bridge itself. So soon the parks will have a recommendation or show you all the options that were given for the bridges, choose an avenue to go, and then that one would get designed for their contract. They did also note that once a bridge is in there and they remove the culvert, it should wash out a lot of the silt that's deposited by the waterfall. And it should also increase the water at the canoe launch itself. So we kind of get a couple improvements in there once a bridge would be installed. The concrete pathway, you guys know BNR Contracting is doing that, and that is underway now. There was the forestation board recommended a tree get removed. It was a sycamore that had died near the picnic area, and so that has been removed. As far as footbridge maintenance, these are some of the trail repairs that Don was kind of hitting at. Ron thinks that the repairs for a portion on the Blue Trail are not going to require a complete rebuild of that footbridge, so that would save a little money there. But he did identify a separate bridge that would require probably some handrails and a bit more of a substantial rebuild that his guys could not do. So more info to follow on that later. The Putney Pond and Woodlands, the invasive plant removal that was in the budget, that will get underway in the fall, focusing on between the dam and the private homeowners. I think it's the Sissons. I could be saying it wrong, but the property owners there on Putney Pond. There's a down spectrum cable across one of the woodland trails. It is not a hazard to anyone. So in case you see it out there, and Spectrum's been contacted to remove it. And I don't know the status as of today. Boot scrapers have been ordered and received. Those will go at the park trailheads. So that'll help for kind of those rainy day scenarios. Bluebird boxes have been received. That was a project that was taken on by the parks. Ron's purchasing the poles and hardware to be installed. That's in Harrods Creek Park. And information boxes will be put up on the kiosk that will hold the new brochures, the park brochures and the bird watching brochures. And that'll be done by a scout. I don't think it's for his Eagle project. I think it's a volunteer project just to advance him in his rank in scouting in general. And then our next meeting for anybody interested is scheduled for Monday, September 13th at 5 o'clock. I might be able to answer any questions if you guys have, and if not, I'll contact Linda and have her get in touch with you guys.
Any questions for Sarah? Not, we'll move on to the US 42 Safety Group report by Herb Schulhafer.
What about the forestation board?
Oh, Lee, do you have a report?
Yes, I do.
Please, I'm sorry I overlooked that.
That's all right. Actually, a written copy was distributed to all the council members, but I'll go over it. We met by WebEx on August 10th. And at that meeting, we were able to involve Rick Wilson, the code enforcement officer, so that everybody could meet him so far as meeting on WebEx constitutes a meeting. And he seems to be doing a fine job. Our biggest issue all along is declining and dead trees. They're ongoing. We actually reviewed 10 specific tree situations, and We just sent out, or transferred to Ron, who transferred to the chief, who transferred to Rick Wilson, requests for removals for several trees along Sutherland Farm Road, Foxtrot Road, Westover, Fox Harbor Road, and two at McDonald's. We also had our meeting, had a property owner who has property at 1619 Wyndham Parkway. He reported on plans to replace 3 trees that were taken out a couple years ago, actually, because of root issues. Another item which was done was the finalization of the tree canopy write-up program. First of all, thanks to Herb, who has really driven the development of this program, and to Andrea Hanlon, who brought a lot of specific knowledge about how this is done in Anchorage, and then also to Sarah Odell, who put in a nice spiffy form, and it'll be sent out in the next newsletter, and inviting residents to apply for $150 grants to put in specific trees that be professionally installed. And we also covered our Arbor Fest, decided to have that on October 30th. This has always been an outdoor event, but we restructured it because of COVID. We didn't have it at all in 2020, but this year we did several things. We're going to make it more of a drive-through event, which will require, of course, a newsletter info to the residents as to how to request or pick up trees, and reduce the number of trees we're going to give out from 75 to 50. And in the past, we've also had commercial tree companies participate, either they're arborists, or in some cases they actually brought equipment and demonstrated it. We eliminated that entirely from this year. And we want to say that the Arbor Fest and the tree canopy programs really optimize the use of city funds, because they involve the residents who actually plant the trees or directly pay for the planting of trees. So we get the maximum amount of coverage for budget dollar. And the way these events are also structured, to a large extent, the residents can select the type of trees that they actually get. It isn't just any old tree. First of all, Andrew Hanlon recommends the type of trees to be made available, and then within limits, the residents can select them. That pretty much was the report. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question, Lee. Thank you very much for another great report. I did read your report. Thank you for all that you all do. You do a great job. My main concern, especially with winter not being too far away, is the hazardous trees. And if I can use myself as kind of a bad example of that, I remember when I was on the forestation board that, matter of fact, you were with me, Lee, and we were with Mr. Barber, our Kentucky forester, and we were looking at a tree, and he said, "That's a really dangerous tree. It needs to come down like really, really soon." And I can remember looking at it, and I didn't see it. And I consider myself pretty good at trees, but I didn't see the urgency of taking that down. So I say that to get to the point. I'm glad that you all are looking at the trees. And we definitely want to do that before winter time comes, when the wind starts going, and the weight from the snow and so on might complicate problems from potentially dangerous trees. Can you elaborate a little bit more on your efforts on that? And is anyone joining you? For example, someone from the Kentucky Forestation or anyone like that, like an expert? Because sometimes you might not be able to notice it, just the average person might not be able to notice it. So
That's absolutely true. No one on the board is certified in determining what is or is not a hazardous tree. Our consultant, Andrew Hanlon, is certified in hazardous tree determination, and any of us, or the mayor or a resident, can say, look at a specific tree, and usually one or more board members does, but we never declare a tree hazardous until Andrea has looked at it and says, yes, that's hazardous, or maybe in some cases, no, it's not hazardous. That's the procedure. Once she's determined that a tree is hazardous, the board votes on it. And usually we have unanimous vote to ask the property owner to take out the hazardous tree. In a few cases, we've had owners dispute that, but once they hear that a certified arborist who is certified in hazardous tree determination has stated that their tree is hazardous and needs to be removed, then we've never had to fight anybody beyond that point.
Thank you.
Leah, I want to thank you and Andrea for coming over to Smithfield Green. We had, our landscaper said we have in the grove of trees in the front on Timber Ridge, we had 5 trees that needed, ash trees that needed to come down. And Andrea came over and looked at them, and 4 of them needed to come down, but 5, she felt that the 5th tree she felt was viable and should remain standing. And
That larger one that's out in the front, right? Yes. So she is reluctant to declare a tree should come out unless she really thinks it's hazardous. She'd rather wait. We've had many cases where she said, wait a year, let's see what their tree does. Let's see how it leaves out in the spring. Some cases are so obvious, almost anybody could determine it, but we use her and it's worked out very well.
Well, it worked out for us, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, is that it for our station?
That's for me.
Yes, Sandra, do you have a report on either the library or the book or whatever?
Just briefly, the book sale will be Friday, September 17th and Saturday, September 18th. And it will be up in the library as it normally is. We'll start getting ready next Monday. And because one of our biggest problems this year is that we have a lot of donations because we have not had book sales, but people also are not used to these kinds of events. You'll start seeing our flyer, which we have now, and we've got some in City Hall, and you'll start seeing them in businesses around town. So if you'd like to tell everybody to come, we'd be very appreciative.
All right. Okay, thank you. And now we'll do the safety group and Herb Schulhafer.
Yes. On Thursday, the deadline for the consulting firms that are interested in submitting a proposal is Thursday at 4 o'clock. That's when the proposals are due in City Hall. We have a meeting scheduled for the next day, Friday, 11 o'clock at City Hall with the selection committee. And the selection committee is a 5-person committee made up of the mayor, Greg, Sarah, Al Bensfield, myself, and Larry Cheney with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet is our advisory member. If anybody's, if you've not seen the request for proposal, it's on the City of Prospect website. And what the selection committee will need to do is to work they work individually. Each selection committee person will be given a packet of each of the submitting firm. Now, Greg earlier this week asked me what I thought the number of firms that may be interested, and I said I believe my guess is between 6 to 10 firms. And it's not, it's a very, the valuation factor is on our website. It's an 8-part evaluation. And what we will do, we'll come back and we have what's called the first selection meeting. And then about a little time later, after we've had time, and we will each talk about our reasons how we graded the firms. And we'll have a chance to sort of reconsider after hearing the comprehensive viewpoints, to have a second selection meeting. And then the selection is based strictly on qualification. The fee is not brought into the equation at this time. So it definitely is a factor, but a later factor. After we hone into the firms we think would be the best firm, we also have two other firms that we consider. What we consider 3 firms for personal interviews. And we will, basically those are an hour each with the firms. And then the selection committee convenes and makes a final judgment on who they think would be the best firm for the city of Prospect. So they will be working for us. They will not be working for the transportation cabinet. So we will take it very serious that we get the best firm. And get a sort of a tentative idea when we will actually be at the point to start negotiations for fee will be basically a month from now. So if you have questions, I'd like to answer them.
Any questions? Herb, I think you were so clear, there aren't any questions.
I love it. Well, thank you.
All right, that moves us into the police report. Is Jeff Sherrod around?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you, I just don't see you.
Okay, well, that's good. I'm trying to be hidden.
Hear you fine.
Okay. We continue to stay busy with the house checks in comparison to what we did last year. Last year, 1,700, this year, 2,654 for the same time period. Most of the other things are in line. However, our dispatch runs were down considerably from 165 last year to 103 this year. Just didn't get called as much, which is a good thing. Officer initiated runs were down. Again, you could just tell from the regular stats here that we just weren't nearly as busy this July compared to last July, which is a good thing. I'll go to code enforcement for the time being. Rick continues to do a great job. You know, for his 12 days that he works a month, he still issued 35 permits, which is great. That's way above what we did before when we had a full-time position taking care of that. One of the unique things he did, he worked with MSD. They did a number of utility digs along the edge of some streets, but they were able to do so without breaching any of the roadways. But he worked very closely with these supervisors to make sure that they weren't going to breach the road in any way, because that changes the level of the permit that he gets. Because there's one that if you actually destroy the roadway, it requires a different permit. So he came to me on at least 3 different occasions and assured me that they got the right kind of a permit. I said, it's okay, Rick, I understand. But of these 8 permits, there was only one of them that was in question, and it was up there around Montero. But as it turned out, they did everything great, and he worked very well with MSD, considering that was pretty complex for somebody that's fairly new at the job. So he did a great job on that. He continues to do great with the unpermitted dumpsters, driving around, finding them. And then he assesses the $100 fee versus the $30 fee. And then on the people that have had them for some time, he goes back and he gets to recollect for the extended time period. So he keeps track of all that and he logs it every day. And he does a really good job of communicating to us, to Tony and I, you know, exactly what he's doing. If he has any questions about the current ordinances, he's good to ask questions. And because he wants to do a great job, and he does do a great job. So we're very thrilled with that. He's worked very well, actually, with Forestation Board. When they issued their letters for people to get rid of the dead trees, in particular the Circle K, we were told that they could be somewhat difficult to deal with. He didn't find that at all. He worked with the people that actually own the business, corporate, and within a couple of weeks, they had 6 trees removed from over there. I don't know if you've looked at it, the back of the place, but it looks completely different because there's no tree coverage at all behind the store. And if you pull out from behind Gracious Plenty, you just realize there's something wrong here. It's because there's no more trees. It's an open field and you look all the way over to the car wash and you're not used to seeing it. It was really strange. I looked over there last week and I said, something's wrong. And then I looked down and I saw all the little stumps back there. But he got 6 of them done and everybody told him that that would be difficult. They were very easy to work with because he's easy to work with. The reports that we had, the felony reports, there's one listed towards the bottom. It's a sexual abuse case. It's from Fox Harbor. It's a little unusual. It's historical in nature. It involved a young victim, a teenage suspect. However, it probably didn't occur the way that it was said to. This was reported out of Oldham County. And so anyway, CACU from Louisville followed up on it. But in all likelihood, it's probably going to be an Oldham County issue. But we notified all the people that needed to be notified. And all the people that would have been involved in that are no longer living in Fox Harbor. This would have happened 5-6 years ago. We did have a stolen car from Fox Harbor. Keys were in the ignition. Purse was taken out of it. Some credit cards were used all the way out off of Cane Run Road. It is there's a pattern of a few cars that were taken, not necessarily in Prospect, but close by. Our officers working with the LMPD 8th Division, they've had a few other cars taken similarly. All of them have been dumped in the same general area off Cane Run, which fits where that credit card was used. And so there's a particular apartment complex where some of these cars have been dumped. So we frequently have checked the apartment complex ourselves when time allows to drive through, because there's 2 cars we're looking for over there. The car that dumped the thief off and then the actual car that was stolen. So we have 2 cars that we're looking for over there. We had a theft of a purse from a car up at the country club. This one was unlocked. Within 10 or 15 minutes, they were using the credit card again at the Walmart on Westport Road. That's wherever we have something stolen out of a car around here. It's the first place they hit's the Walmart on Westport Road. Again, we've recovered video of the person using the card. Sometimes video is good, sometimes it's not as good. And then we had a theft of some lawn equipment from a trailer, one of the lawn trailers over in the landings. And other than that, we recovered a stolen car from another jurisdiction, but other than that, no other reports. Do we have any questions?
Thank you, Jeff.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you.
Coming back to Rick Wilson, I just want to mention that I had an email from John Clark of Sutherland telling us that when we hired Rick Wilson, we hit a home run. Just wanted to share that. Moving on into unfinished business, the first item is a proposed second reading of Ordinance 611, 2021, which is the cleanup budget ordinance for the last fiscal year. Does anyone care to make a motion to adopt that ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Hearing none, we'll come to a roll call vote. Mr. Fulcher,
Yes.
Mr. Hilsman,
Yes.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Mrs. Leonard,
Yes.
Mr. Farnsley,
Yes.
Mrs. Odell.
Yes.
Thank you, and that ordinance is now adopted. We'll move on to the second reading of ordinance 612, 2021. It's the same kind of ordinance, a cleanup ordinance for the municipal road aid fund budget. And there again, I would seek a motion to adopt that ordinance.
I'll move
So
for a
moved.
second reading. Second.
Moved. There's been a lot of noise. Anybody want a second Sarah's motion?
Second.
Lots of seconds. Again, Mr. Fulcher,
Yes.
do you vote? Mr. Hilsman,
Yes.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Mrs. Leonard,
Yes.
Mr. Farnsley,
Yes.
Ms. Odell.
Yes.
That also is adopted unanimously. And we'll move on to new business. I have nothing on my agenda. Does anyone have any? Comments from citizens? Any comments from citizens? Well, I've hit the end of the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Adjourned. Thank you.
Have a good night, you all.
Good
Good to
night.
see everybody.
You as well.
Night all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am so excited. Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be great. And I think the